Yeah, we're doing well here. Why don't we take the proposed operating budget, item number 8. After item number 8, we'll have our closed session, and then we'll have lunch. So Robin, this is our first look at the 2016-17 operational budget.
Yes, it is.
Thank you very much.
And I have a short presentation that will get teed up. It's just a couple slides. Again, the purpose of this item today is to get your input on our proposed changes to the operational budget. The information that you have before you did presume that the item 2E would be approved, so I don't want to mislead you in terms of the comparables to 15-16. It is based on that, those adjustments already being incorporated. What you'll see as I go through this is that the overall operational budget, which includes all funds. So
Robin,
this.
actually, your mic's not on.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. Thank you. I could hear myself. Didn't help anybody else. You'll see that the overall operational budget, which is a combination of things across funds. So we have the state teachers retirement plan, and that budget is going down by 5%, primarily as a result of the reduction in the amount this year for the pension solution project as compared to last year. The deferred compensation fund and the health benefit fund increases are primarily reflective of changes in benefit costs and salaries that are assumed in those numbers. Again, if you look within the state teachers retirement plan only, so that first chunk, we see the internal programs going up by 3%. The continuous operational budget, which includes the corporate governance staff as well as certain audits, legislative analysis, going up. And then the technology projects, this is where that's evident, going down based on the change in the request from that original BCP for the pension solution project. The next slide goes over the BCP, the budget change request history, and you'll see that we had a significant increase in 14-15 and 15-16 due to the pension solution project, and now we're coming back down as the changes in the out years are reduced from the initial 2-year period. The one budget change proposal we have is associated with the complexity of the investment portfolio and the moves to both more actively manage the risk as well as to bring more of the portfolio into internal management. Supporting that are changes in financial services for accounting for that portfolio and in human resources for recruiting the staff that are needed to manage that portfolio internally. And with that, I'm prepared to take any questions on the slides or the budget documents that we have.
We might have a couple of questions or
Sure.
comments. Mr. Rosensteel?
Thank you. So, I guess every year that this comes, I have a hard time understanding sort of how we define our budget constraints. Because if you look at TRB 60, you show inflows and outflows, and our inflows are $37 billion, and our outflows are $13 billion. So, I mean, I never understand. I mean, we're kind of mixing apples and oranges here, right? I mean, we've got most of what's going on here is we've got money coming in from investments and contributions, and most of the money that's going on is to pay benefits.
Correct.
And then the amount of money that we're spending on the administration of the system is while it's a very large number, it's kind of dwarfed by all of these other numbers.
Right.
So how do we decide what our budget constraint is when we develop a budget?
Well, and it's a good question, and part of the change that we're going through internally is to look more holistically at the system. So historically, the focus has just been on the operational portion and not looking at the inflows and outflows of resources associated with the contributions and the benefit payments, for example, and the assumed rate of return and the complementary costs that are involved in investing. So the purpose of that is really not from a budgetary perspective, but to put the operational budget in context. So we do, in fact, within our control environment, set up constraints internally on those items of revenue and expense because we do have a planning cycle. And then if things exceed those planning numbers, those planning numbers become a control from a is something going wrong perspective. So we do use them as constraints within our operational cycle just to make sure that we have warning if something that is unexpected has occurred. So, and again, the purpose in sharing it with you is to put context around the operational budget, which is one subset of those outflows. Did I answer the
Well,
right
so
question?
Not exactly what I mean, I don't really understand the numbers on TRB 60 because I don't know, for example, what the investment return of $30 billion is. I mean, our investment assumption is 7.5% on what's now 185 billion roughly. So that's not $30 billion. I'm not really sure what that is. I mean, we know that on a cash flow basis, we're actually negative in the system. But what I thought I heard you saying, which I have a problem with, if I understood
All
you
right.
correctly, and maybe I didn't, is there are there are certain functions, for example, that you oversee
Correct.
that we need to do, we have to do. We can't suggest that we cut them because we have a bad year in investments, right? I mean, in other words, the investment return that we get, we know some years is going to be good, some years is going to be bad. It shouldn't be what drives the determination of the operating budget, right?
And it doesn't, so to
Okay.
speak. It is really a matter of putting those dollars, as you point out, which are large, in context of one is tempted to call this cash flow, but it's not, because you're right, the investment returns are assumed and then reinvested in the system. The way to pull out cash from here would be to look at the member contributions, the employer contributions, the state contributions against what is buried in a footnote 2, that says we're going to get interest and dividends of $5.5 billion. And again, that's based on Chris's 10-year plan. So you're right, this is all planning numbers, and they could deviate. And then look at what we project we're going to put out in terms of benefit payments. But I do think it is, we're maturing, and I hear you, and we would like to get it to a place where we can do that cash forecasting.
Yeah. See, I guess.
Mr. Rosenshaw, can I just
Yeah.
interject for a second?
Yeah.
Because for some reason, this appears to be more complicated for me than I think it needs to be. I'm thinking of an operation budget.
Right.
And I have a general idea of what the operation budget is, and I can see what the salaries and benefits are. I see the number of employees we have in the system. I can do a simple math calculation as to what the cost per FTE. And so I'm looking, but then there's this whole other conversation taking place around inflows, outflows, returns on investments. From my perspective, I want us to have a really I'd like to have a more complete understanding of the operation budget relative to, departments. By department, what are we spending? We can see we're increasing FTEs into Mr. Alman's department for reasons that were explicitly stated. Over a 3-5 year period, what those trends look like, what kind of discretionary authority does the board have over some of this stuff? So I appreciate the line of questioning, but.
Let me define what I mean. For
Yeah,
example, normally a budget, you know what your resources are, and you budget within those resources. I don't understand what our resources are here. If we as a board decided, for example, that we needed to hire 3 more internal auditors, do we have the money to do that? Because I don't, that's what I'm saying. I don't understand the constraints that we are working under as we make decisions about what, it's not, it's a decision how much we want, and that's the question I don't understand, and maybe somebody can.
Yeah, and let me turn it over to Mr. Unterman, and I would concur, and I think, Robin, could you help us understand, the finish line is when? This is the first reading?
This is the first reading, so we
When's the
bring the
finish line?
operational budget back to you in November, and then our portions of our operational budget are included in the governor's budget, which is released on the 1st of January. So that's how our timetable gets set up. The board has the authority to set the budget, and in terms of the question that I wasn't answering, I think the constraints really become peer set, right? And we do analytics on the costs that we experience, which we can again expose more clearly to you. Our costs for assets under management, our costs for benefits, retirees, our costs for total members. We have those comparables, and we look at where we fit within those ranges. The other things that we do is associated with both cost and service in participating with the CEM surveys on both the admin and the investment side. And so I now understand your question, and that's the frame within which we look at the effectiveness of our operations as a proportion to the service that we're providing, whether it's investment management or benefit payment administration.
Let me turn to Mr. Unterman for any questioning.
I mean, I think I understand what you're doing, and this is a report that matches a state government mandated reporting format. It's interesting, but from a point of view of us exercising oversight on your spending, I don't find it meaningful. I mean, I think the way most a self-managed financial entity like a trust or anything else or other big pension plans, they set a target amount of assets that would be your operational budget, because theoretically we could spend the whole thing.
You could.
We're not going to, and we have to say what's a reasonable level to be spending, and maybe when you come back, you can come back to us with that. At this point, you're spending, as I remember the numbers, it's about 1%, 180 mil.
Right, well, yeah, if you look at the,
Yeah,
well,
and the question that I think we should grapple with is, for an institution of this size, whether the 1% is a reasonable level, or whether we should be thinking that it should be being driven over time lower.
well, it's not, well, it's 200 and, I mean, depending on how you want to look at it.
Yeah.
Whichever piece you're taking, you've got a 81 million dollar number. So what I can bring back, and we do track this, is peer comparables within large pension systems based on assets under management, so one metric, based on total membership, another metric, based on retirees, another metric. And I can tell you that where we sit is in the mid ranges based on all of those metrics. Those are very macro level kinds of metrics. We can definitely break it down by organizational area. One of the things we have in process is developing a cost accounting system that will allow us to price certain kinds of functions, which is a different view.
Sure.
So I'm happy to
This
provide
is-
that.
Yeah, the reason this is the first look at the budget for
Right.
16, so this is a great opportunity for the board to give you some input and feedback for what we want by the time we adopt. Betty, Ms. Shi?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think there are a couple steps here, but I think what Tom and Paul are asking for is definitely part of the, I think, the review and analysis that we want to do. But I think the initial, when I think about an operation budget, it really is the display of where we got our money, where we're spending it, looking at the internal operation in terms of the amount of dollars that are in there. I'd like to see a little bit more of a trend about where each of those internal, what they've looked like over probably the last 3 years. And then kind of stepping back and looking at ourselves as a system to see whether, how we compare. So I see it as kind of this is just kind of the beginning steps, but probably even a little bit more granular with respect to this initial display.
Right,
about
so
where
we were
we've been.
trying here to show you the three-year comparable by the various plans, as we call them.
Right, right.
So again, but we can break that down within more granular levels. that's not a problem. We can add historical perspective to it, that's not a problem. You will definitely see a bump in 14-15 because of the pension solution, which does go through our operational budget as a part of what gets approved. So it would be meaningful to split out capital projects probably, so
Right,
you could
exactly.
really look at the operating set.
And then with respect to fund sources, because don't we fund part of our operations from investment
all
returns
coming
as well,
from the-
right?
It's all
different,
coming
right?
from the fund,
So,
which
I
is
mean,
why
yes.
that item on TRB 60 is showing you, at least on a annual estimated basis, what is coming into and out of the
Right.
fund. And I understand your questions, and I'm glad you're asking them. This is the first kind of
It's
discussion
how,
about
it's how
that
my
that
brain
we've.
works in terms of the
we've
starting
had.
point and then
Yeah.
looking at the comps.
Good.
Anything else, Ms. Yee?
That's it.
You're fine, very good. Mr. Rosensteel, and then if anyone else wants to weigh in and give some input or directions in this first look at the budget, please do so. And I know Ms. Madsen would make herself available to any of us at any time if we wanted to have a closer look at some of the items within the budget that don't necessarily have to come before all of us at a given time. So, Mr. Rosensteel?
Yes, thank you. I just had some very specific questions. I was wondering why fiduciary insurance and legislative analysis are pulled out of the budget as separate line items and they weren't in the past. Is there a different funding source, or why is
Yes,
that?
it is a different funding source, and we had collapsed it. And part of this is getting us in alignment with our underlying line of business systems. And so we had collapsed those into the operational budget, but they're continuously appropriated. They're specific lines in legislation. And so the reason this is, there is a dichotomy in the presentation is to get us in complete alignment. In other words, they were underscored within a number, but not called out
I see.
specifically
So
as to how they were
weren't
funded.
categorized
Right.
into continuous appropriations, and now they are.
Yeah,
Okay,
so it is a presentation
Okay.
change, and we wrestled
Okay.
with how to
But
best
that makes
disclose
sense.
that.
I just didn't understand that reading it.
Yeah.
The second thing is that on page TRB 62, this is where we seem to really be focusing in on what the differences are, which
Correct.
are the proposed 2016-17 budget augmentations and proposed operational increases. And I was just wondering, that's about $8 million. What are we doing with that $8 million?
So a lot of it is prescriptive in terms of benefit changes as we get our numbers from the state. You know, we've had increases in insurance and retirements expenses.
For our employees.
For our employees, right. So, and this is the first time that we've actually had to book under GASB 68. So as we discuss our financial statements, you'll see that our costs are going up on the accrual basis because we are incorporating the unfunded liability of the, of our particular proportionate share.
We're
under
including that, though, in the budget?
No, but that flows through as retirement rate changes from finance, in other words.
Okay.
So you see the waterfall, basically. So there are
Yeah,
rate
if we could
changes.
I would just appreciate the next time if we just see some of the detail on what that,
So what we tried to do, Paul, and again, some of this is a matter of finding the right level of information. We tried to describe what the changes were in narrative, and I can pull that out in the numerical presentation as well. It's just, again, it's looking for the right balance. So, you know, there's a net reduction, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that the pension solution costs have,
no, I understand that. And so I understand that you've got the operating budget.
Right.
You've got the continuous operational budget, you've got the internal programs budget, you've got the continuous operational budget, you've got the tech projects budget. So I'm just focusing on that first one, which is the
Right.
internal programs
Right.
annual budget. I understand the total is coming down because of changes in tech. I'm focusing on those two numbers, 2,572,000 and 5,646,000. All I'm asking for is detail about what those are, because
Right.
that seems to be where the change in spending.
right. So the augmentations is the one BCP, which is described on page TRB 63 for additional staff. And then the 5.646 is described in the narrative, and again, we can look at better ways to do this at the bottom of TRB 62. And it talks about the $5.6 million or 6% increase due to estimated personnel costs of $3.848 million, and that's for merit, salary, and classification adjustments for staff, as well as there are also benefit changes.
Okay.
Okay?
Great.
So, but again, we can
I was just-
present
I
in
was-
different
I
ways.
was
It's-
just having a hard time
I
finding
understand.
the,
So
putting the
maybe-
numbers from
Right.
the text. Thank you. That's all I was asking. Thank you.
No problem.
Seeing no one else in the queue, the next time this comes back to us, Robin, is when, Ms. Mattson?
We'll bring it back in November, and
November.
I will give you a longer-term historical perspective as well as bring the metrics forward.
Sure,
you
so
can
as
see
you're,
that.
as you're getting this together for November, I'll check in with my colleagues to make sure you're getting the right feedback as you get closer to putting the
Sure.
item together, so it reflects the desire of the committee. Mr. Unterman?
Yeah, just one thing, as you bring back metrics, I think it'd be helpful to segregate operation claims processing expense from investment management expense, so we get a comparison as to what's appropriate relative to peers for each function.
I don't know that I'm gonna be able to do that by November. I'll make an attempt, but I can tell you just wrestling internally, it's tough because not many systems, including us, yet have fairly sophisticated cost allocation. So when you think about the functions that service both, you have to allocate that across. And so we make an attempt, we do make an attempt, and I can use those data. But I don't have that same information for others. What I do have is information that's based on publicly available budgets and CAFR statistics, and so I can show you that.
Okay.
And I understand what you're looking for. I'm just not sure I can
Great.
get it all.
There must be a pretty big ask if you personally are not able, given your work ethic, that you can't get it to us by November. Go pretty hard.
Well, I can't do it on myself, but.
So thank you very much.
Okay.
And we'll see you in November, and we'll talk a little bit more closely as the item is drafted for
That's
November.
fine.
Thank
Thank you very much
Ms.
for your
Mattson.
input. I appreciate your
Thank you.
questions.
Okay, with that, we're going to adjourn out of open session. We're going into a board-only closed session. It'll just be us for 15 minutes, and then we're gonna have lunch.
Will
So-
you tell us when you're done so we could?
12:30, we should be there at 12:30. We are on item, is it item 9? Yes, the System Risk Management Report, the executive staff. This is an information item, so Ms. Mattson?
Yes, I'm just going to kick it off by highlighting a couple of things for you. So this is our semi-annual report. It reflects 2 updates that we had as an executive staff because we do quarterly reviews of our risks. So this report to you is a reflection of our process over the last 2 quarters. One of the things that we considered in our last quarterly meeting was a change to our risk panorama based on the fact that we had a potential initiative on pensions, as well as the fact that we've moved into the implementation phase of the Pension Solution Project. So obviously that changes the risk environment around transformational risk from one oriented towards planning to one oriented towards action. So we had a lot of discussion about that, and that's reflected in the updated details that you see attached to this item. The other thing I want to point out for you, and I apologize for it being somewhat out of sequence, but on TRB 72, we created a overall heat map where we place the risk in context at this particular time according to what is called a Marcy chart, or a typical Magic Quadrant, trying to get a sense overall of our risk environment. This includes both inherent and risk, as well as the things that we are leaving as residual based on our mitigation. So you'll see a slight differential in terms of how they're ranked here versus how we've ranked them within our risk assessment management process, where we're looking to mitigate the things that we can. So with that, either I or any member of executive staff are happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions from Ms. Mattson or the staff? The report is very thorough. Seeing no questions, we'll move on to the next item. Thank you, Ms. Mattson. Item 10 is the Business Renew Program Update. Chris Coyetti and Ashish Jain.
Harry, I'm gonna actually speak to this.
Okay,
And
Ms.
it's not because I'm
Lickner.
on
matter
Sure, very
expert,
good.
but I just wanted to give a little background and context as to the report and how we're going to be reporting on the pension solution project moving forward. This report was prepared, and there's not a presentation with it, at least for this session, but staff again are here to speak to any questions that you may have relative to the report. We historically have had this, the status of the report from the program and sponsors perspective included in the CEO report. But now that we're a little bit further into the contract with CGI and Sagitech, we have decided to pull this out to give it a little bit more focus for the project sponsors and the project directors to come and speak to it and highlight some of the progress and where we are relative to the project. And then following the report, we will have the oversight consultants come in, and that would be the Grant Thornton, who is going to be speaking after this item, and then our IV&V consultant, who is going to be onboarded in the next couple of months. So again, there's not a presentation with this report, but I just wanted to highlight that it's going to be a new report that you're going to be seeing as we move forward. And again, if you have any questions on any of the content here, Chris and Randy and Ashish are all here and available to answer those questions. Otherwise, Grant Thornton will follow with an oversight progress report.
Seeing anyone in the queue? No one's in the queue. Thank you very much. Appreciate it, Cassandra. Graham, come on up. Thanks. Good afternoon, Ms. Finley.
It's our corporate lavender.
Corporate branding is
Royal purple.
This was Joy's input, right?
Yeah, well, good afternoon, everyone. Graham Finley with Grant Thornton presenting our regular independent oversight report. You have the written board item, but what I'm just going to do in a couple of slides is hit some key points that I wanted to make sure you're aware of, and then I'll take questions. So we'll start with pension and then do data prep. I would say, I think for both projects, it's been a pretty productive month for both, and they've made a lot of progress. So I'll hit some of the high points, and then we can take questions. So to start with pension solution, so the CGI team is on board. They're ramping up through the month of July into August. They've started to submit the first set of deliverables associated with the project, and they're generally planning deliverables. The CalSTRS project team has been reviewing those deliverables, and to date, they're on schedule with the review and acceptance and revision process. The most important of those planning deliverables is now under review, and it's the project schedule. So I'm sure you'll understand the importance of that in terms of defining the milestones for the project, the sequencing, the deadlines that all parties are going to be adhering to through the life of the project. So over the next 6 to 8 weeks, that schedule is being reviewed, and there's some fairly intensive discussions going on between CGI and CalSTRS. The intent is to have the schedule, what's called baseline, basically fully agreed to by the end of October. And that'll be presented to you, I believe, in the November board meeting. That's probably going to be our biggest single focus from our perspective over the next couple of months, is making sure that the schedule is complete and accurate. And one of the key things we're going to be looking at is the resources associated with the schedule. Not only does the schedule define a set of milestones, it also defines a set of obligations for both parties in terms of the activities that CalSTRS is going to undertake and the activities that Team CGI will undertake. Part of CalSTRS' review of the schedule is making sure that they have the resources necessary to meet their side of those obligations. And that's a part of the review that they're undertaking right now, and that'll be a particularly big focus of us over the next 5 to 6 weeks as we're reviewing the schedule and making sure it's complete. The one item I'd sort of bring up in terms of a concern that's been running over the last several months is around some of the staffing for the key technical positions. There are 3 that have been open: the technical manager, the data architect, and the solution manager. Happy to report that the technical manager has now started on Monday, so that position is now filled. The data architect is expected to be filled by the end of the month. Solution architect will be a little bit further out, probably. Those two positions are not critical at this point. If they went another several months without being filled, we would start to get concerned, but the technical manager was by far the most important, and that person has started this week. So any questions on pension?
Seeing none, Ms. Finley.
Okay, go to data preparation. There you go. So one of the main achievements of the data preparation project actually did in the last month or so was revise the governance plan to provide clear guidelines on how the various stakeholders associated with this project are going to be communicating. So there are multiple parties who are interested in the results of this project. You've obviously got the data preparation project team themselves. You've got the business focus group, which is the group of people looking at the various policy decisions and making recommendations about potential policy changes. You have the Pension Solution Project itself, and you have the Enterprise Information Management Program, which is looking at sort of enterprise-level data strategy. All of those have a role to play around data prep, and it wasn't really clear how they were going to be coordinating until a few weeks ago when the project team revised the governance plan, I think really solidified how those parties are going to be talking, how Pension Solution is going to be talking to data prep and coordinating over the next several months, and that's a really positive step from our perspective. The project had been struggling with some resourcing issues and not having the necessary staff. That has been pretty much addressed at the moment. It's still a little bit behind and is probably going to remain somewhat behind for a while, but the key resourcing challenges that the project had have been addressed. The one area that's still open, and it bears again to the Pension Solution schedule, is the sequencing and scheduling of data preparation activities in support of Pension Solution. And that, again, is going to be all part of this Pension Solution schedule review over the next 6 to 8 weeks. And so what we're going to be looking for is making sure that the needs of the Pension Solution around the data prep project are clearly identified, and the data preparation project understands those and is able to agree with the Pension Solution on what their deliverables to the Pension Solution is going to look like, and that is all clued in so that we can have reasonable level of confidence that as the Pension Solution gets to need the products from data prep, those products will be there at the appropriate level of quality. So that's really going to be our focus as the schedule gets laid out in the next couple of months. Any questions on data prep?
Mr. Rosensteel?
Can I just ask about what you just said? So Pension Solution is on schedule. Data prep is behind schedule, but we don't know yet whether the data prep being behind schedule will have an impact on the Pension Solution schedule?
Yeah, so what the data prep project has done is laid out a set of activities that they know they can get done. And they put a schedule together to start marching down, basically fixing issues or addressing issues that they know are going to have to be addressed at some point. They don't necessarily know the sequencing of what's going to be important to Pension Solution yet. So they're marching down a path, doing work that's going to be needed, but what they don't yet know is the exact sequence and priority from the Pension Solution perspective of what is needed when. That's what's going to be clarified over the next 6 to 8 weeks. And at that point, we'll have a better set of understanding of, okay, is data prep really going to be able to meet Pension Solutions' needs? Because right now they've created their own schedule, basically, to do what they can do.
Got it, thank you.
No other questions? Thank you, Mr. Finley.
Thank you.
And thanks to Ms. Higa. I know she's weighed in on some preparation for this material, and
Yes.
thanks for that, Joy.
Thank you,
Appreciate it.
too.
If I recall correctly, there were no items referred to the Committee for Board Action. Do we have any new business information requests? None that are noted. The draft agenda for the next board agenda. Jack, is there anything that you want to highlight for November that you want to bring to our attention?
Just for marrying this agenda with the Audits and Risk Management Committee, I mean, November is always our most important month for our financial statements and the auditor's opinion. So the Audits Committee will be hearing those, and then we'll do a financial statement review with you in the formal board meeting. So we always kind of view November as that month for focus and everything. Of course, your next meeting's October. And on next Monday, I'll send out the final agenda that I've done with Harry and Sharon for the offsite, so you've got the detailed timing of everything and what we're doing.
It just reminded me, Jack, if you could have someone just email a draft, wherever the draft is now, to Grant, Mr. Boykin.
Well,
Yeah, but yeah, for today.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Of the offsite.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he had asked me to get that form today, so I just remembered that.
Yep.
And I'll just bring to the board's attention item number 10, which is on the agenda. We'll get a little information update on how we're doing that with that issue.
Right.
Mr. Bartow, do you want to add
I was noticing that 15 minutes is probably going to have to be adjusted.
Yeah, we may
I think
need a
it's going
little
to take a little bit longer.
Sure. Okay, very good. Okay, thank you. Opportunities for statements from the public? Seeing none, we will adjourn. We'll see everybody in October in Riverside. Thanks.